Hello and welcome back to Frogboy X1 Gaming. I'm Andrew, and today I want to talk about Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart and why I believe that that will be the first next-gen game of this new generation. So, consoles have been out for 6 months now. We haven't seen anything from either side that we can truly consider a new next-gen experience. Demon Souls, PlayStation 3 game that has been upgraded to next-gen. So essentially that's still rooted in the PlayStation 3 generation. Miles Morales plays on PS4, so that's not really a next-gen experience. We have basically nothing from Microsoft to give us a next-gen experience at the moment. And from the way it looks, it's probably going to be end of the year before that actually... Well, everything coming out Microsoft this year is probably going to be cross-gen, so I don't know if we're actually going to get a next-gen version of anything from Microsoft. And E3 is right around the corner, so we might find out if we're getting something next gen from a third party. But as it sits right now, I cannot think of one title on the market that is a true next gen experience. So, with that, Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart is going to be the game that ushers in the next generation of gaming. So, I mean, that kind of puts a lot of weight on Sony's shoulders and Insomniac's shoulders to truly deliver a next-gen experience that is 4K 120 frames a second. Because that's what it says on my PS5 box. And that's what it says on my Xbox Series Xbox too. They both have the 4K 120 frames a second. So that's what I was led to believe that we would be getting as next-gen experiences, and that makes me pretty happy, 4K, 120 frames a second. So, we've got 20 days until Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart launches. And if I remember correctly, we're already hearing talk about it being 1080p 60 frames a second or 4K 30. 4K 30 to me does not sound like next gen, but I'm going to reserve my judgment for Ratchet and Clank for when it comes. I'm truly excited for this game because as it sits right now, this will be the first next gen game that isn't a remake, a remaster, rebooted from the past. This is its own game that, that doesn't run on cross gen. So, yeah, I'm thinking that this is actually going to be it. This is going to be the game that we've been waiting for the last 6 months to finally. Well, wait, isn't it 7 months by the time it comes out? Yeah, 7 months. So 7 months from the launch of the new consoles till we get our first actual next-gen game developed for next-gen hardware with next-gen features. So I am definitely expecting something truly mind-blowing. So let's think about this for a minute, okay? Ratchet and Clank, from what we've seen, is an extremely high fidelity visual experience. Like these visuals look pretty good. How that's going to translate to our 4K TVs, I don't think. I mean, it might be possible. Maybe Ratchet and Clank launches with a 1080p 120 frames a second. Like, that'd be cool. That'd be way cool. I would love to see that. That would be extremely interesting if they were able to pull that off. I mean, yeah. In my mind, a true next-gen experience is going to run 4K at 60 frames a second. That's just where I'm at. Whether that's native 4K or upscaled 4K or AI upscaled 4K or checkerboard rendered 4K 60. That's where I kind of feel that this generation should be. I feel like we should be able to finally get a 4K at 60 frames a second experience. You can't tell me that's unrealistic. I mean, honestly, you can't tell me that that's being unrealistic, because both of those boxes clearly state that they can do 4K at 120 frames a second. So my tempered expectation is 4K 60 frames a second. That's me being conservative about the experience I feel I should receive for the marketing that has been done. So, is Insomniac going to live up to that and deliver a 4K 60 experience with high fidelity visuals? I don't care if it's upscaled, but I want that image to be 4K at 60 frames a second with high fidelity visuals. That's what I was sold. That's what I was told. I was told 4K 120. Both of those boxes say 4K 120 frames, 4K 120 frames, and this even says 8K. So, should I expect Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart to be 8K at 30 frames a second? Because I feel like that wouldn't be misleading. That would be okay. 8K at 30 frames a second, that would definitely be okay. And I wouldn't expect more than that, because I know that neither of these consoles are going to be able to push 8K at 120 frames a second. And it doesn't say that anywhere on the box about it being able to do 8K 120 frames a second. So at minimum, I would expect at least 8K 30 frames a second. Microsoft is definitely behind on being able to produce games. But they didn't lie to us out of the gate. They told us, hey, for the first year or two, everything is going to be cross-gen. So, I don't really expect a next-gen game from Microsoft this year. Maybe even the first half of next year. But after that, then I'm going to start being like, hey, okay, so what's the deal? I get that we want to keep the last-gen consoles in the loop. After the first of next year, everything going forward from that for Microsoft, I think we should be able to consider that a next gen approach, even if it does, because Microsoft's GDK obviously is gonna be scalable across, from PC down to Xbox One S or Xbox One. So if they find a way to give us a next-gen experience on the Xbox Series X, but then port that experience all the way down to Xbox One, I'm not gonna say that that's not a next-gen game, just because, we've seen next-gen games ported to Switch that work. If they're willing to let them go to Potato Land to run on the Xbox One S, I'm perfectly okay with that, as long as on my Xbox Series X and my Xbox Series S, I get a next-gen native game. So, basically where I'm sitting right now is my expectation for Ratchet and Clank is 4K 60 or 1080p 120 frames a second. That's my expectation for that. Anything less than that, and I don't think I'm going to be able to call that a true next-gen experience. And I don't think you should either. I think that that's where I'm going to draw the line. This generation is 4K, 60 frames a second will be considered a next-gen game with high-fidelity visuals, because they both told us high-fidelity visuals during E3 and during the state of play when these consoles were announced. Did they not? We should hold them to that. If the games are not at least a minimum of 4K high fidelity with 60, at least minimum 60 frames a second, should we consider those next-gen experiences? And should we pay a $70 price tag for the next-gen experience? yeah, this is the consoles. These are consoles, and it's a console market. So I just feel like we should hold them both accountable if they don't deliver on the promises that they made. My expectation is a 4K image with high fidelity visuals at minimum of 60 frames a second. 4K 30 is last generation. That is Xbox One X territory completely. So if Sony puts out games any more of this 4K 30, that's going to really start to annoy a lot of people, because we were told 4K 60 frames a second, 4K 120 frames a second. Like, both of these consoles should do that with a 2.1 HDMI cable. Like, it is what it is, but we should be able to at least expect a high fidelity 4K 60 frames per second image across the board. We should be able to expect that. I don't see any reason why that is unrealistic to expect from these next gen consoles, because Xbox One X has already shown us that 4K 30 is more than possible. We should be able to get, because both these consoles depend on us to buy their games to pay for the subsidy that they gave us for these consoles. Should we be buying games that do not live up to what we were sold? I mean, they made the consoles, right? They built them. They said, hey, these are the specs we need for the rest of the generation to deliver a 4K 60 FPS experience. I don't want to see any more of this cinematic mode 4K 30. Like, I don't want to see that. I'm already... I mean, it's already disappointing that I can't play Demon Souls at 4K 60. Like, that's pretty disappointing. 1440p at 60 frames a second. But I shouldn't have to sacrifice my 4K high fidelity image to 1440p if they told me that console would run like that. I mean, yeah, I mean, it's definitely a good thing that we get told, you know, how the games run before they come out, so we can definitely make an informed decision. And there's going to be plenty of people like me on the internet to tell you exactly how things go. But yeah, in my experience, I believe that we should be able to expect a 4K high fidelity 60 frames per second experience on our new consoles. Both of them are capable of it, so we should be able to get that. And every game that doesn't hit that, we should definitely, you know, make a little bit of noise about that. You know, I mean, that's kind of where I'm sitting on it. That there should be enough to let you know how I feel about both consoles. Honestly, I want a 4K high fidelity 60 frames per second experience. That's what I was told I would get. That's what I want. I don't believe that's unrealistic to expect a 4K high fidelity HDR 60 frame per second experience. At least minimum from the guys that built the consoles. Am I right? Like, that's where it should be. I mean, third-party developers, they didn't sell us the console. They didn't tell us the console was going to work like that. So I'm not going to hold them accountable for that. I'm going to hold the console manufacturers to that. I do give Microsoft the benefit of the doubt, because last generation they did deliver at least a minimum of a 4K 30 FPS experience, and even games at 4K at 60 frames a second. So, I mean, it was pretty close, and third-party developers jumped on and did their best to give us that better-looking experience as well on the Xbox One X. So I definitely feel like we should be able to expect a 4K, high-fidelity 4K 60 frames per second. I know I've said that a lot, and I know it's like probably starting to wear you out, but I don't think that's unrealistic. So if you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you.